Inside this lengthy 3-page survey lists the lack of student learning opportunities, the pandemic shedding light on the issues even more. According to the survey, nearly 2,000 teachers cited huge inequities, especially in the state's alliance districts. Some of those include Hartford, New Haven, Stamford, and Waterbury. Teachers frustrated at the lack of funding, shortage of PPE, cleaning supplies, learning resources, and poor ventilation.
Things like contact tracing, which is incredibly important when someone tests positive for COVID in a school, that those protocols are not locked in as they should be in some of the other districts. Cleaning and the meaning of deep cleaning.
Williams says there should be statewide standards on how a district should respond should a person test positive. Teachers even submitted comments, some saying we don't have a lot of the extra protection some schools have, like plexiglass on desk, and another saying students who have opted for virtual learning have not received these necessary materials. However, when asked about this at a news conference, Governor Lamont says 97% of students have logged on statewide, and thousands of Chromebooks have been handed out.
I can tell you that Connecticut used more of our CARES Act money for education than I think any other state in the country. I think we're providing PPE for all of our schools, doing everything we can.
State Education Commissioner Miguel Cardona says the state secured one of the largest funding plans per student in the region and country.
Of the $266 million that was focused on education in Connecticut, half went to 30 alliance districts. So half of the $266 million went to 30 districts out of close to 200.
And while he says the numbers are not perfect, he says Connecticut is doing much better compared to neighboring states like Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York, and New Jersey. Carmen Chow, Fox 61 News.